So, let's talk about July 22nd, 2011. It's a day that completely shattered Norway's long-held sense of peace, a national trauma that unfolded over several horrifying hours. We're going to break down exactly what happened that day and take a hard look at the profile of the man responsible, piecing the story together from public records and court documents. 77. That's the number we start with, and it's just devastating. You have to understand, this was the single deadliest act of violence in Norway since the Second World War. Every single one of those numbers represents a life cut short in a horrifying, meticulously planned act of terror. And what's so chilling is just how efficient and calculated it all was. It wasn't one attack, it was two. It started with this massive car bomb in the heart of the government district. But while all the emergency services were scrambling to deal with that chaos, the attacker was already on his way to a second location, an island youth camp, where he carried out a methodical massacre, killing 69 people, most of them teenagers. So you have to ask, who could do something like this? Who was Anders Behring Breivik? To really get a grip on what happened, we've got to look at him, and the public record paints a really complex and honestly a deeply disturbing picture that started long, long before that day. You know, the really shocking thing is that the warning signs were there from the very beginning. I mean, very early. When he was just 4 years old, psychologists were already raising red flags about his mental health. The reports described such a troubled home life that one psychiatrist came to a stark conclusion. For the boy to develop normally, he had to be removed from his mother. But that recommendation, it was never followed. So how does a person get from there to committing mass murder? Well, it was a long, slow burn. It started with petty crime, then moved into far-right politics. But when he decided his political party wasn't extreme enough, he left. And that's when he started to actively prepare for violence. He was methodical. He joined a gun club, and he even set up a fake farming company just so he could buy the tons of fertilizer he needed for his bomb. Right, so these attacks, they weren't random, not at all. They were designed for one reason, really, to be a platform. His whole goal was to get a message out there, and he spelled it all out in this massive manifesto he published literally moments before the first bomb went off. See, in his own mind, he wasn't a terrorist. No, he saw himself as a savior, a soldier, fighting some grand war for the soul of Europe. He used this quote, which he attributed to Napoleon, to justify his actions. He believed the threat, as he saw it, was so huge that it justified, well, anything. And this manifesto, wow, it's a sprawling 1,500-page document that lays out this whole far-right extremist ideology. It's a tirade against Islam, feminism, and multiculturalism, things he blamed for what he called cultural suicide. And when you boil it all down, his stated reason for the attacks was just to make sure the world would pay attention to this document. But here's the really interesting part. For all its size, this grand statement, it wasn't original at all. It was like a Frankenstein's monster of extremist ideas all cobbled together. I mean, he literally just copied and pasted huge chunks from the Unabomber's manifesto, swapping out words like leftists for cultural Marxists. He praised all sorts of groups, from Hindu nationalists to, believe it or not, Al-Qaeda for their methods. Okay, so when he's finally captured and brought to trial, the entire thing boils down to one single, absolutely crucial question. Was he a sane political terrorist, or was he a psychotic madman? The answer would change everything. And this was the central battle of the whole trial. The first team of court-appointed psychiatrists came back and said, yep, he's a paranoid schizophrenic, criminally insane. Well, that set off a huge public outcry, which led to a second evaluation. And their conclusion? The complete opposite. They said he wasn't psychotic at all, but that he suffered from extreme narcissistic and antisocial personality disorders. So the court had two completely different reports. In the end, they went with the second one. They decided he was sane, that he knew exactly what he was doing, and that he could be held criminally responsible. And for Breivik himself, believe it or not, this was a win. He actually wrote that being declared insane would be a fate worse than death. Because he was ruled sane, he got this really unique sentence under Norwegian law. It's called preventative detention. It's not what you'd think of as a life sentence. Instead, it basically allows the state to keep him locked up indefinitely in 5-year chunks for as long as he's seen as a danger to society. So the sentence starts with an initial term of 21 years. That's actually the maximum initial prison sentence you can get in Norway, with a 10-year minimum before he could even ask for parole. But you have to understand, that number, 21, is pretty much just a placeholder. It's almost a guarantee that he'll be in prison for way, way longer than that, likely for the rest of his life. But his conviction was far from the end of the story. From inside prison, he's just kept on fighting a different kind of war. This time, it's not with bombs and guns, but with lawsuits, using the very legal system that put him away. So he's held in almost total isolation from other prisoners, but his living conditions have become this huge point of debate. Get this, he has 3 cells, one for living, one for studying, and one for exercise. He's got a TV, video games, a computer without internet, and he's even been allowed to enroll in university courses from his cell. And he has used his situation to sue the government again and again, claiming his isolation is a human rights violation. He actually won one of his first cases, believe it or not, before a higher court overturned it. And as soon as his 10-year minimum was up, he started applying for parole. Every time, the answer is a hard no. The courts keep ruling that he is still just as dangerous as he ever was. And then there's this, which is just truly bizarre. He's legally changed his name. Twice. First to Fjotolf Hansen, and then again to something that sounds like it was pulled straight out of some Norse fantasy. It's just this strange little detail that really seems to highlight his continued detachment from reality and his immersion in this fantasy ideology of his. And so, when all is said and done, the whole case of Anders Behring Breivik leaves us with this really tough, lingering question. His constant legal challenges force Norway, and really all of us, to wrestle with the massive challenge. How do you protect society from someone who will never, ever change, while at the same time upholding the very human rights that define your society? It's a question that, honestly, has no easy answer.